guys, I'm here today with our own Rob Gilmore, who spent years working directly with operators across the industry. So let's get started here. How did you get started in the boating industry?
So interestingly, I didn't really come from a traditional boating background outside of really just a passion for boating. I was introduced to boating as a very young kid with my grandparents. We had a property down on Lake Belton, and back in the day, he would take me out fishing, and that's when it really started hitting that, I love this. I love being out on the water, and spending time with family. I think that was really what it was all about for me, was having, that opportunity to be on a boat with my family and share some, memorable moments. But as far as, business goes, I didn't really come from that traditional boating background. I came from operations and building systems in both the military and then later in the private sector. I've always been drawn to business that involves logistics, people, and real world assets. The boating industry just happens to be one of the most complex versions of that. So I got introduced at a later in life to Nautical Boat Club, and it really clicked pretty quickly. You've got high value assets, customer experience, you have all of the different weather variables, safety variables. It's really a dynamic environment. From there, I got pulled into franchise development and support because I naturally gravitated towards helping others and helping them build and scale their business.
Nice. So impressive title. So what does the Director of Development and Franchise Support actually do? Like, what's a day-to-day look like in that role?
Oh, wow. There's a lot to unpack there. There's the day-to-day, and then, of course, there are some of the cyclical challenges that you face throughout different seasons throughout the year.
Sure.
Anyone who's run a boat business understands what I'm talking about. But it was really a mix of, I would say, the key priorities were sales, recruiting, strategic operations, and a lot of coaching. So on the development side, I was working with prospective owners, franchisees, as we were looking for, helping them understand the model. The financials were a big piece to that, and then of course whether or not it's a right fit for them. It seems like a very glamorous business when you think about running a boat club or a boat rental operation, but it really does take a specific level of grit to survive in the industry. So shifting over to the support side, that's a whole other beast to unravel. But it was everything from helping launch new locations to troubleshooting operational issues that they would have. And then, same thing with existing owners who might be 4 or 5, 10 years in, trying to help them understand, okay, where are we at now? What, how do we continue to scale? So that could be anything from staffing challenges, membership growth, pricing strategy, or even, just basic dock flow and operations on a busy Saturday. A lot of it came down to helping owners make better decisions ultimately, and make those decisions quickly enough to keep up with the environment that they were in.
Right. Very cool. Well, I think I'm going to ask the $1 million question, right? So what goes into launching a successful boat club from the ground up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody wants to know.
Yeah, there's a lot of key factors there, but if I had to really whittle them down into whittle them down into some of the key important factors, I would say, location and marina partnership was where it would all begin. Trying to find the right spot, it's location, but it also comes down to the partnerships that, that evolve within, within that atmosphere and what those relationships look like. If any of those two factors are wrong, everything else just becomes exacerbated. It's a lot more challenging. Then you have fleet mix, right? So matching the right boats to the market and usage. So you can imagine if you're operating a boat club in the north on a lake versus operating it, here in Destin, Florida on the beach, you're going to have different vessels. You're going to have a different level of demand from a different customer base. So a lot of research and competitive analysis and just talking to people and understanding the environment is really key there for that fleet mix. Then you have, of course, one of the areas where I'm really passionate about is that sales process. For a boat club, you can imagine it's a lot different than selling a boat rental. You need a clear, repeatable way to convert prospects. And that can be somewhat challenging when you look at the price on paper compared to renting a boat or buying a boat. So you really do have to have a process in place. And then once you get everything, once they've decided, yes, I'm ready to open a boat club, it comes down to training and operations. Obviously, there's the safety factor, there's onboarding staff, and a lot of consistency matters a ton with how you're operating day to day. And then, of course, we talk about systems. Every business these days has to have a system in place. For the boat club industry, it's booking, it's billing, and communication. You have to, be really dialed in early. I think the biggest mistake is underestimating how much structure you need from day one and how much time it takes from that point to actually opening a boat club.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, you kind of touched on this a little bit, talking about different markets and such, but can you talk to us a little bit more in detail about evaluating a new market? Like, what factors would you tell someone to look at? Do you have a list of, or, a checkbox for each?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a checklist galore. We had checklists for everything. And I'm glad you bring that up because, you don't want to oversimplify, but a lot of the answers are relatively simple. It just comes down to doing the work, to finding, what key factors within a particular market are going to make, a boat club owner successful. If I had to break it down in layman's terms, it was really, what we looked at was the boating demand, seasonality, obviously, the local demographics and disposable income. That was one thing that we would always look at very specifically to understand, right? Is the money there? Is there the type of community that really enjoys boating? And what percentage of the community is going to be potentially willing to join a boat club? Then you have marina availability and what those terms look like. As you can imagine, you go state to state, there are different regulations. It can be a little bit more challenging to get into particular marinas and areas depending on what the politics are. So that could factor in. And then you have competition, right? So that's one of the easiest place to look at when determining, okay, is this area a right fit? Do a competitive analysis. Look at, all of the other rental operators, the clubs, and even private ownership trends. We would talk to local boat dealers to understand what their sales would look like in a cyclical year, and that would help us kind of determine, okay, what's the key time frame for us to actually do our marketing and then set those targets for executing the actual sales. When people are out looking for boats, they may be looking at other options, so you have to give them that as an option and explain those differences. But honestly, I would say one of the biggest factors that I really had to hone in on was the owner-operator fit. A great operator can make an average market work quite well, whereas a really bad operator can struggle in an amazing market. So those are some key things that I would look at if I had to really break it down in simple terms.
Awesome. It's great insight. So put your director of development hat back on and tell us, with recruiting and growth strategy, right? So we talk a lot about growth, especially within BookingCentral. What were you looking for when you recruited new owners?
That's a really good question, and that's where I think a lot of people get this wrong, specifically from what I've seen in the rental industry. We weren't just looking for investors or someone wanting to start a side hustle. We're really looking for operators who were serious about it. We looked for people who could follow a system, were comfortable with sales and customer interaction. That sales piece is huge. And customer interaction, I think, is even bigger in the boat club realm, because now you're dealing with, your customer base almost looks at that operation as a country club. Think of a golf country club. What are the interactions like between a member at a country club and the staff? That's how we have to look at boat clubs, and you specifically have to find that right individual. It can sometimes be like finding a needle in a haystack, to really execute on some of these things and be able to determine through that process, does this person really want this, and are they willing to treat it as such? The best franchisees treated it like operating a company, ultimately. I mean, it's not a passive investment. So those were some of the key factors that we would look for.
Cool. Well, obviously we can tell you were very hands-on, and I think that's what brought a lot of success. Talk to us a little bit about financial. Like, did you help your franchisees understand their financial model before opening? Like, what did that process look like? How did you get in with them?
It's another great question. I mean, this part of the process would start very early on. I could look at, we kind of are building up to it now. We're looking at the competitive analysis. We're looking at the demographics. That's going to help us determine what our price point is on an actual membership, and what's going to be in that Goldilocks zone that I call it, for getting the right demand. And then it comes down to going over those finances with an owner. And a lot of times the best way to do that is to talk to other owners. That was one of the things that I would always encourage people to do, and I was very good at setting people up with meetings so that they could actually talk with somebody who can tell them what year 1 looks like, year 2 looks like, year 3 looks like. It's so important to see that. But there's also, you have your basic, simplified version of that. And what are your fixed costs? You obviously have your slip rent. You're going to deal with insurance. Now you've got to look at, your highest expense, which is going to be labor. What does that look like year 1, year 2, year 3? As you begin to scale, now you need to be able to factor in some of those, variables on what a staff is going to look like year 3 versus year 10 with
right.
2 or 3 locations, right? So you have to be able to plan ahead with, a well-executed pro forma and be able to estimate what that's going to look like. And then you have your variable costs. There's so many variable costs in any business that we have to look at that we just, outside factors determine, and we're not able to really estimate those. So in a proper, P&L, I want to factor that into the spreadsheet and understand, okay, how can I build myself a nice cushion? And then you have your membership targets. This is one that, year over year, this is one of the areas where I would see people struggle because sales is challenging, specifically in boat club sales. You have so many, you have competitors out there. You have the boat dealers that you're competing with, and then you're having the boat rental operators that you're competing with, and now you're trying to, convince somebody to join a boat club. So there's there's some challenges there. So it's really all about setting those membership targets and putting that down so that okay, year 1 I absolutely have to meet this target. Now we can work backwards from there. What is it going to take to meet that target, and are they really committed to doing that? And then obviously you have your break-even point, and then we would put a very heavy emphasis on those EBITDA margins. My goal for every boat club operator was to be somewhere between a 25 to 35% EBITDA margin, and that's when you really start getting into that ball field of, okay, if I can meet that target, now I can start to think about expansion and growth and actually turning this into a career that will replace whatever other career that they came from. And then we would also walk through some of those what if scenarios. What happens if you sell slower than you had targeted, or what happens maybe if you sell faster, right? There's always that lovely challenge to have of, oh my gosh, we sold 10 more memberships than we had expected, but you still have to be able to look at that and factor that into proper growth, right?
Sure.
And then of course when I have a story from, working at a location down in Texas, and the year that we opened, we had some of the worst weather. We had a hurricane that came in, and it pretty much wiped out one entire month of our selling season, which was, yeah, it was totally brutal. That's like the perfect word for it, because it was catastrophic to that first year, because you're not only dealing with the hurricane itself and how that sways people's, the psychology around boating, but now you have the aftermath of that. So a lot of the people in the community are cleaning up after a hurricane. They've spent a lot of money on that cleanup. The last thing they're thinking about is joining a boat club, because now their extra income is gone. It's not there. So, again, going back to that, it's really, you have those weather disruptions and outside factors that you can't really, predict. So you do have to be able to understand that those are possible and be able to react to them positively in order to survive and ultimately thrive. So if I had to really break it down, the goal was clarity. If they understood all of those different levers, then they could manage the business.
Cool. Well, yeah, obviously you were very hands-on in the beginning with, your franchisees, set them up for success. Knowledge is power is what we're learning here. Like just a lot of assistance on the front end. So what does it look like though? You got a franchisee, they're up and running. What kind of support did you provide after? Did you high-five them out the door? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of that. Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of coaching. It was a lot of, counseling in some cases. You have really tough environments that these operators are working in, depending on where they're at. The real focus, I think, that I would spend on with them was the sales process. As long as, we know this in every business, as long as we're selling, and we're setting up those tours, and we're following up with prospects who are coming out on the dock, making them feel welcomed, making them feel like, hey, this is the place for you. Again, I use the analogy of a golf country club. When you walk onto into a country club, what does that atmosphere feel like? Right. That's part of the sales process. So it's really working with a lot of the operators to help them understand, like, sales isn't just picking up the phone and cold calling. Sales isn't just answering the phone when someone has a few questions about, what a boat club membership is. Sales is really building a relationship with them and nurturing that relationship in any way possible, and including them, when cool new things are happening. If you make them feel included, they're going to start naturally feeling involved, and that really helps with that sales process. On top of that, of course, leading into sales, you have the marketing consistency, and that's really not just running ads, but actually tracking what works. You're in marketing, every year over year, marketing strategies have to be malleable. You have to be able to change those strategies based on, again, competitive analysis, what's
trends,
the atmosphere, what's the
location,
exactly, what are the trends, and who's the target market. One generation may be attracted to one type of marketing, where another generation that's coming up into those years where now they're building families, you have to think about what type of marketing attracts them. So it's really tweaking and making those adjustments year over year, but again, following up and seeing, okay, at the end of the year, did that work? What worked? And how can I adjust those levers with marketing spend in order to really gain that traction and bringing in good leads. And then, of course, member experience is a huge one. Retention is everything in this model. You don't want members to join and quit next season, because that's going to adjust your sales targets, year over year. The best sign of a healthy boat club is when you have a member who stays, typically between that 3 to 5 year range. And if I can get an average of 3 to 5 years out of a member, then that's a great sign that they're happy where they're at.
Yeah.
It's a sign that the owners and the managers and the dock hands are treating them well. And it becomes very hard to leave a boat club when you're treated that well, and you don't have to deal with all the maintenance and all the BS that comes with owning a boat. So that's what you really have to aim for is giving them that experience that makes them want to stay. And then obviously you have operational efficiency, how many outings per boat, etc. Growth usually wasn't about doing more. It was about doing the basics, but doing them better than the competition is what we focused on.
Cool. I love that. Well, so that brings me to, I'm curious, did you ever see a trend that separated like the high performing locations? Did you see anything that they did a little bit differently that really worked?
Oh, absolutely. You have your bell curve with boat club operators. You've got, if you all know what a bell curve is, it's, you have your top performers, and they're going to be in a very small percentage. There's 20% of owners out there are going to be in that top percentile. So I'll talk a little bit about what they do. And it's really speed to lead is one of the big ones. The lead comes in, you've got to be on top of it. My rule of thumb was you respond within 1 to 2 hours. That way you don't lose them. You never know what could happen in the in the day behind that. They may be also shopping around, looking at other boat clubs, looking at buying a boat. A lot of thoughts go into people's minds when they get the you get the itch to buy something like a boat, you know what I mean? And psychologically, a lot of inhibitions can go out the window. So if you're the first one and you're responding and you're explaining and inviting them out, showing them the boats, doing a successful tour, you're definitely going to have a higher probability of signing them as a member. So that was one of the key factors that I would see in the successful operators. And then, of course, consistency in the process, not reinventing everything, something new every week, just doing what we knew how to do and doing it at a very high level. I used to call it, concierge service. When someone shows out on the dock, you're rolling out the red carpet for them. You're, ultimately making their lives easier by offering a boat club. What does that look like? And I always would ask owners, like, what would you want that to look like? And that's one of the big key differentiators that would separate those high performers. And there's a lot of stories around that. One of the, out in Kima, I opened a corporate store down there, and I had someone call me. It was one of our members. His wife called and said, "Hey, it's so-and-so's birthday. Do you guys do anything special for birthdays?" And I was like, you know what? Absolutely, we do. So went around the corner. I bought him a case of beer. I went out. There was a really good Italian restaurant around the corner that I actually went to eat with him at, and I knew that he loved, and he was a regular there. So I actually catered in an Italian dinner for him and his wife to have while they were out on the boat. And those extra touches are what really just made for really special moments, for them. And again, that's another key differentiator is really thinking about your customers, at a higher level. Like, who are they? Get to know them. What do they like? What could really enhance their experience out on the water, on the boat, whether it's bringing them Italian food or bringing them a bunch of, there was another guy who we would always bring bait for. If I knew he was coming, I would go pick up because I knew what kind of bait he liked. I knew what he fished for. And I would go get him a cooler full of bait. And he absolutely loved that. Very, low cost for me to give him an exceptional experience. And for that reason, I'm pretty sure he's still a part of the club because I kind of set that trend with him. So now he doesn't have to stop at the store on the way to get bait. It's all taken care of for him. But again, it's just the attention to detail operationally is the key there, and not resting on your laurels, right?
Yeah.
You have a good sales season. Don't think you just, you're some awesome salesperson. Like, you got to keep sharpening those skills year after year. And the high profitability owners know that. they were really disciplined, and and again, the struggling owners, I would say, if we go back to the other side of that bell curve, are the ones who were constantly reacting. That was really the key.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I love that. My background's hospitality, so the white glove service, love that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's switch gears if that's okay. Let's talk a little bit about technology and operations. So what technologies were required, and did you help implement any of them?
Oh gosh, absolutely. This is where I did, spend a lot of time, both when, onboarding a new owner, but also being, a liaison, if you will, between the current operators and the software companies. So, as you can guess, there was a lot of, throughout the years, a lot of different changes. So new softwares would come in, old softwares became obsolete. If I break it down to the basics of what a boat club operator would need, for us, it was all locations obviously used a booking system, and then you have, to manage leads and customers and whatnot, and then you have QuickBooks for financials or whatever, other software used for those financials. Those were some of the required, systems, technologies that were needed. Some of our locations would also use systems for like two-way texting. That was a big one. Email marketing. That was another one. Fleet management, along with anything else that they chose to include. So varying tech stacks. I think that it really depended on the owner. Some of them were very tech savvy, tech heavy. Others wanted to keep it basic. So those original three that I mentioned, booking system, CRM, QuickBooks, those were kind of like the core of like, here's what you need to start and run successfully. My role really was helping translate those tools into actual workflows. How does staff use them daily? And ultimately not just setting them up, like how are you actually going to efficiently use some of these systems to give yourself a strategic advantage.
So with all that said, did you pick up on where operators struggled the most with different technologies or systems?
Oh man, there were really a few areas. Reporting was a big one. They had the data, but they couldn't necessarily interpret it. And you can imagine, like I was saying earlier, if you have a club operator and they're operating with multiple systems that aren't communicating with each other, deciphering reporting and proper data is very challenging in that regard, and it can sometimes not give you the full picture or give you a fake picture for that matter. Process alignment, I think too. I've worked with systems that didn't really match how a boat club operated. So those were some key pieces there. And then of course, if your staff doesn't know how to use the system, they're only going to use the pieces of it that they're comfortable with. So it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning of this was, coaching and continuously talking through some of this, doing workshops to show them how to use certain technologies and making sure that they could see some of, the advantages of using it. For example, I'll use the booking software as an example. I used to love when people would get those light bulb moments of, oh my gosh, it can do this, or I didn't know it could do this. Cool. That's what technology is here for. It's to make your life a lot easier. So let's learn how to do it properly. And if we do that, good data in is good data out. So now the owner's happy because they're getting better data that they can use to make strategic decisions with, with regards to, their business. So, a lot of systems were built more for tours, I would say, than rentals or memberships, which, can create a lot of friction too, because there's just, you don't know what you don't know, right? I talk to so many people out there who are, oh, I'm fine with working with this particular system. And it's like, okay, well, that system's meant for tours. So yeah, it might work fine. But if there's a system that is specifically built for rentals and memberships, what can that system do for you? Because that system has been specifically designed for what you're doing. So there's marginal gains there that can take place once owners would realize that.
Well, yeah, okay, so talked to us already a little bit about that. The systems and what they can do, and technology is great. But do you have any? Can you give us an insight with what an inefficient system could do? Did you see franchisees struggling or?
Absolutely. I mean, gosh, one example I'll give that was just a silly, frustrating one. One of the technologies that we were using, it wouldn't notify the staff when a booking changed. So the staff had to constantly have this software open on their desk and monitoring it if there was a cancellation. There was no notification that went out. That's one small example, but I bring that one up because that's a small example that can completely throw off a busy Saturday in the middle of summer when you have other club members who are on a waiting list, and now you don't have real-time ability to inform another customer who may be waiting to take that boat. So that was one thing. Longer check-in and check-out times is a big one. The biggest club we operated was they had 50 boats. So you can imagine how many staff you have to have running a 50-boat club. In our system, you had one turnover time, you had your morning outing, and then you had your afternoon outing. And then there was a 1 to 1.5 hour turnover time. During that turnover time, you've got to get the boat clean, and then you've got to be ready to check in that next guest. If the check-in and check-out process is slowed in any way, now you're eating into that ability for the turnover to be successful. And then you have, again, more manual work for staff, with leads and whatnot. If you miss follow-ups with leads, that is a huge, fail, in my opinion. You do not want to...
Money on the table.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to leave money on the table. Perfectly put. And then, poor visibility into revenue and utilization on the boats. That's one of the things that I really love to look at with systems is, how good is the data coming out? Can I use this data and can I see, everything in full clarity that I need to understand when it comes to, okay, what boats am I going to purchase next year? Or, what staff is doing a really good job with their turnovers, or who's really killing it in sales? What are they doing differently? What can the system show me that they're doing differently to help me, incentivize that or build a new system around those successes? So ultimately, those things that can slow business down just cost you time and money.
Sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about industry challenges. So we know operators that are curious, and this is like a hot topic right now, getting into the boat clubs and memberships. What are the biggest operational financial challenges you would say?
Really, I would say on the operational side, it is the relationship with the marina. If I have to go back to the beginning of it, there are certain ways to negotiate with getting into a marina that can either really help you when you're looking at exit strategy down the road, the valuation on your business. A big mistake I see people make is signing 1-year leases on slips. Maybe you're not thinking about it at that moment in time, but 10 years down the road, say you want to sell that that club, you're looking at the value of your assets. You're also looking at the ability to continue running businesses. And if you're on a 1-year lease, bank doesn't like that. So that's, so those are some of the things that people can get into with financial pitfalls. Of course, you're managing high value assets that require maintenance. So there's some challenges there. I would say in the boat club arena, if you want to learn more about how to do that, reach out to me because there's a lot to unpack there. Staffing during peak demand, what does that look like? Of course, staffing is going to be the largest expense. So how do you really fine tune that down to what's necessary to, again, increase that EBITDA margin? And then, I spoke on it before, but weather variability and then cash flow seasonality. That is one of the beauties of the boat club business model is it does create opportunity for year-long cash flow, but it can be a tough sell.
Sure.
So those are some of the challenges. And then, of course, going back to staffing, it's like seasonal, right? So how to retain staff.
Sure.
I've got some awesome strategies for that, learning over the years that really interest a lot of, staff members out there. A lot of them come in high school, they're working on the dock in the summer. By the end of their high school career, I would have them begging me to come back when they were in college and coming back for the summer, because they're like, wow, I can make more money doing this than I can, bartending at a bar. And that's kind of my litmus test of like, okay, if I can help them make more money than they're making at a high volume bar, then they're going to keep coming back. And now I don't have to train them as much.
Right.
So that was always a key thing, that I would be looking at too. And it just supports them in something they're passionate about. The guys that come out on the docks they don't come out there because they're just looking for a summer job. They come out because they're usually really passionate about boating too,
right.
which is a lot of fun to help lift them up. But yeah, it's a business where small, inefficiencies get magnified very quickly.
Well, cool. So I know, you're not per se in the industry anymore, but you have a finger on the pulse and you're very well connected and, you know what's going on. So do you see the same mistakes do you still see that? Like when you look around, are you like, oh, what are you doing?
I do, to your point, maybe not as much as I used to. But now I do, specifically in the boat club area. There are some, a lot of mistakes that I see happening. And then there, of course, there's a lot of operators out there who do a really good job with it. But I would say it's probably 20 to 30% of them that are really just killing it. If I had to narrow it down, I would say it's, overcomplicating tech stacks, not tracking real KPI with, with their staff, with their sales, and then with some of the, the overhead, of course. Say it again, I keep harping on it, but slow response time to leads and not having that really dialed in sales process. It is really it's not like selling anything else. It's a different beast. And then underestimating operations. A lot of people, I find they do sometimes underestimate the day-to-day operations, especially if they're coming from a different sector within the boating industry. Shifting the mentality to what is required for a boat club, which is again, like a country club, is requires a lot of detail within the operations that it's going to retain those customers, but also attract new ones as those, your existing customers go out into the world and talk about how amazing it is and how crazy they were for not doing it sooner and wishing they wouldn't have bought a boat. Those are your biggest salespeople. So what you do operationally is going to have an impact on how they feel about their membership and what it means to them and their families. And that's really the key is, they love it because it makes them happy. It makes their families happy. And you really want to key in on that. And then probably the biggest one, I would say, is just waiting too long to fix problems. Like in any business, it's ignore it until the end of summer,
Reactive.
you got to be really proactive, and that usually starts at the end of the boating season, right? You think you get a break, it's not that way in a boat club. Whereas, maybe rentals, it can be a little bit, you get a little bit of a break.
Sure.
A boat club industry, it doesn't stop there. It's okay, now planning starts. October, November, let's get ready for next season.
Cool. All right, well, let's switch gears again. Let's talk about why you're sitting here. Why did you make the move? Why are you with BookingCentral? So what gaps did you consistently see?
I saw that operators really needed better visibility into their business. They really needed something simpler to work with. Workflows, again, customer outing focused workflows, less manual work. And then again, a system that actually matches how they operate day to day. That's what really got me attracted to BookingCentral, because it's very user friendly. Our founder talks about, being able to pick up your phone when you purchase it and intuitively knowing how to use the phone. That's what BookingCentral was for me when I first got on the phone and I got on a demo and actually looked at it. It was shocking to me how user friendly it was, but in the same sense, how so much of what I was talking about earlier is included in the software. So when you talk about the fleet management aspect of it, when you talk about before and after pictures, the check-in and check-out process, those are just to name a few, but there's so many pieces of it that I was looking at thinking, okay, with this software, I could get rid of 3 or 4 other additional softwares that help me run my business, and I can keep it all in one place. That, to me, that's what operators need, at least from what I noticed.
Cool. Well, you were exposed to a lot of technologies, right? Like we talked about during your time. Did anything stand out with BookingCentral?
The first thing that really stood out for me was, that I could tell it was built for rentals and again, high value assets first. It wasn't adapted from tours or some, a previous target out there. This was specifically built for the rental and the, club model. So that stood out, and I could see that very quickly in how many features were built into the software, and that was attractive to me. I would say too, the one thing that blew my mind was the two-way integrated communication. Previously, I was working with a lot of operators that were either using their own personal cell phones to two-way text, or they were using some other, technology out there that's really meant for two-way texting. And you'd go look at their computer screens, and they have, 10 tabs open with all these different things that they're having to use to manage the operation, manage a lead, manage a communication and whatnot. So those were some of the things that stood out to me. And then, of course, the fleet management and asset tracking piece to BookingCentral was key, because it really is in this industry. You all know how valuable it is to be able to track your assets. In the boat club specifically, you want to be able to track those, because that's going to determine year-over-year strategy and boat purchasing and boat selling and whatnot. But also acting quickly. Again, being able to act quickly when a boat goes down and know all of the details as to the why. And then we have an integration with BoatFix. Shout out to BoatFix. You guys are awesome. Our system does have a direct integration with them, so one of the things that was key for us was geofencing. In some bodies of water, obviously, you have to have geofencing to be able to, see what's going on with the boats, where people are out on the water, set up areas of, no-go zones, monitor battery life. There were, some of those key factors that, again, we had to have a separate technology for that. With BookingCentral, it's on your dashboard. You don't have to click onto a new screen. You can just pull up, that asset, management side to it and see what's going on with everything. So if it's just aligned better ultimately with how operators actually run their business in the rental and boat club side of things.
Cool. Well, you sound happy. So would you say it was a natural next step for you in your career here at BookingCentral?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that comes off, because I really am, happy with being in the boating industry in general. And of course, growing into a passion for the software side of things came, it really stemmed out of, years of operating, and supporting different owners. I had a pretty clear view of where they struggled. So, joining BookingCentral felt like an opportunity to solve a lot of those problems at scale instead of just one location at a time, helping them put out fires. Now it's, okay, what are the source of those fires, and how can I work with the development team to help bring about and build and evolve a software that can house all of this stuff in one place, but make it easy to use so that people aren't having to spend weeks over weeks, learning and figuring out. So that's what really makes me happy, because at the end of the day, I love hearing the reviews from our customers, and especially when they switch from a software that may not have been meant for a club or a rental operator, they all say the same thing. I didn't know it could do that. I didn't know this was possible. And that's what really brings me a lot of happiness, because I've been on the docks when days are rough.
Been in their shoes,
and it's painful when something goes wrong and you're bleeding money in an industry where you have a window. You've got a short window in the boating industry, so you've got to really strike while the iron's hot, for lack of a better term. So that's a lot of fun for me.
Cool. Well, we know you're kind of in the know with everything, right? So maybe if we look ahead, do you have any insider, do you know what's going on? What's happening? Where's the industry headed? There's so much, that's happened in the last couple of years.
Let me pull out my magic lamp here. Or wave the magic wand. Maybe my daughter has a magic wand that I can borrow. I wish I could say that I did have some magic wand that would help me in looking ahead to what where the industry is going, but I'm not going to make that claim. I will say that there are some key things that I'm looking at and seeing as far as trends go. We're dealing with a different generation that is coming up into the boating world, so there's a lot of opportunity there. When you look at our generation and younger, they're not necessarily thinking about going out and buying a boat, right? They still love boating. So how do we introduce them into the boating world? A lot of times they get introduced through renting a boat, and then there's that gap of, well, I really love boating. I don't want to own a boat because it's a lot of work. Now there's something in between that can offer them a really awesome solution. I think aside from that, the boat club industry and the boating industry in itself is growing exponentially in the billions. By 2030, it's just one of those industries that's going to continue to thrive, and that I love to see, because it is on a growth trajectory. I think when you get down to the nuts and bolts of things, I think that membership and recurring revenue is really going to help out a lot of boat owner, operators who are looking to turn their passion for boating into a business. The club model it offers, year-long cash flow. It offers, a different customer base. Your customers in a boat club. You have, roughly 100 to 200 customers that all of them by name, their families. They're really excited to see you when they show up at the dock. There's really not too many bad days, because they're not having to deal with all the maintenance that you're having to deal with. They're showing up and they're just lovely to be around because they're excited to get out on the water. So I think better customer experience through technology is going to be another thing. As technologies look ahead, they need to be able to progress to improve that customer experience. You deal with automation and efficiency. Of course, we're in the world of AI, right? So a lot of the things that we're looking at are around automation and just making things more and more efficient, so that you can keep up with the times, chip away at some of those expenditures that may have previously held you down. Now you've got a software that can handle some of those things. So that's where we're really looking to automate and make things more efficient. And we do a lot of this based on, data. So I'm a very data-driven person. That was kind of my job in the military, was to look at a lot of data. So we're using, data-driven, proven processes to make decisions on the development side with regards to what we want to look at year after year in order to continue providing our customers with the best possible advances in the software. Again, operators who embrace systems will inevitably have a really big advantage as society progresses into this new technological world.
Yeah, the unknown. So that's great. I mean, such interesting stuff. Love all that. Well, okay, so since you don't have your magic lamp or magic wand, because your daughter isn't here,
No.
what would, like, just advice for business? We're going into summer. What's, that's pretty much season for most operators. What's the advice you would give them going into this season?
I really like to just bring it back down to basics. Again, there's no magic, answer to, how to increase your sales 30% year over year this summer. It's one, a piece of advice I could give someone here in Destin, maybe completely irrelevant to someone, operating in a lake in Wisconsin, right? So I will say, the tightening the sales process. That's where, I've seen in the past a lot of people fall short. Sales process to me takes practice. We were big on role playing. I would role play with people just to kind of give them different scenarios, give them different personalities, really sharpen their skills in being able to communicate and nourish leads and actually execute sales. So that's one key piece that I think is huge for every season. So tighten up your sales process now so that when things really heat up, you're dialed in.
Yeah.
Make sure the systems are dialed in, right? Like, I always struggle in this industry because, you hit November, December, January, start to lose practice on how to use systems and what they're doing and keeping up with, maybe the system you're using had 3 upgrades over the winter since they had time to focus on that. Do you know what those are and have you practiced with them? That's key, right? And working with a system that's really good about updating you on that and giving you, tools, whether it's, I like the BookingCentral, we have our blog, we put out videos constantly, we're more in tune with how to educate our customers so that they know going into the new season, oh cool, this new feature came out. And then I can give you data on a feature and statistically what that can mean for revenue. And that's what we want to educate people on is how to use those systems correctly. Train your staff early. That's a big one. I would always tell people, hey, let's start training in January. Let's train on sales in January. Then we're going to train on customer service in February, and then we're going to train. I would have different months where we would target different types of training so that when it was like, all right, rubber hits the road, they're tuned in, they're ready to go. And then of course, focus on reducing those frictions before the peak season hits, because once the fire hits in the middle of summer and boating season is in full force, there's no more opportunities to do that training and that sharpening, so to speak. Busy seasons really expose weaknesses, so fix them before it all starts.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, I guess it's safe to say that you really love the industry.
Love boats.
What do you enjoy? What would you say, just kind of starting to close up here, what would you say you love the most about this industry?
Oh man, it's really the people, love working with people. I love the environment that the boating industry, obviously we get to be in beautiful environments, around, really cool people. I love, helping people build business. You're building businesses, but you're also part of people's best days. And that's a lot of fun in this industry. I love that the industry is great at bringing in younger generations and giving them just an amazing pathway to success. Again, in an environment that's extremely fun, but also challenging. It requires growth. It requires constant sharpening of skills. So being able to help younger generations come up in an industry like that is a lot of fun. I think the next generation of club owners have a really great opportunity to really take advantage of the growth that is coming in the boat club atmosphere, and a lot of them are hungry for it. And that means, that's great news for owners too. You know, they've got a
Sure.
lot of great pool of people out there who love the industry and who want to learn, and that's what makes it so much fun for me, is being able to see those people grow, help them grow, and see them succeed, not only for them but for their communities and for their families as well. So that to me is just super exciting.
And I see that with you. You're very passionate, and it shows in your work. So that's awesome. All right. Well, I feel like I've asked you a lot of hard questions, a lot of details. So to wrap it up, one final fun question. You have to have a favorite day on the water?
Oh man, any day on the water is a great
True.
day.
Good answer.
But honestly, it's hard to beat sandbar day with the family. Good weather, good people, no schedule. That to me is really hard to top. Fishing, so either sandbar, or I love deep sea fishing. So if I'm out on a boat fishing, that's a happy day for me too. So yeah,
Even if you don't catch anything?
even if I don't catch anything, if you're on, like I said, if you're on the water, that's a happy
True.
day. Or even if you're by water.
Yeah,
So
right.
I can't complain.
Next best thing.
Yep, absolutely. So that really all that's hard to top for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rob. This has been awesome. It's great insight. If anybody's interested, please reach out to Rob at bookingcentral.com, and we look forward to hopefully hearing from you.
Yeah, thanks again for sitting down with me. I really appreciate it. Those were some tough questions. Thankfully, I didn't lose my voice. So yeah, that was a lot of fun, and I'd love to do it again. And again, like Victoria said, if you want to reach out to me, please visit us at bookingcentral.com. If you want to learn more, I have a lot of different insights, and I would love to show you what the software can really do to help you improve your systems and help you grow.
Cool.
So thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.